All right, we're live. This is Alberto.
And this is Mark.
We are the Undiagnosed Shamans. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm really excited. We've been talking about starting this podcast for at least 3 years.
Yeah, man. It's time flies when you're having fun, I guess.
Everything in divine right timing, though, right?
That's true, though. I agree.
Yeah. So
the Undiagnosed Shaman is an idea Mark and I had that basically is about alternatives to the current mental health, I guess, treatment. Basically what it is that we were not happy with the way people were treated who were in mental health treatment, and ourselves being working for a mental health provider, we wanted to see better, and we have a lot of ideas on what we could do and what things could be better in a different way.
I think the title Undiagnosed Shamans is pretty spot on, like as far as we project that when we talk about the show and having guests on. I think my therapist actually said that she thought the undiagnosed part was like a little jab at the psychiatric community in America, which I think is pretty spot on. Yeah. And then the shamans part meaning like if we had mental health issues in Peru or something in a small village, we would be the village healer by now. I'm 50 or whatever,
40.
You know, I'd be like the head guy of the village, being the village healer or something like that. So, and then over here I'm just a normal guy doing remodeling every day.
Yeah, I think originally we thought of the name because we find that mental health and mental illness has a deeply spiritual core, and not everybody sees it that way. But from what we've seen in our adventures working in peer support and just meeting people in the community, either professional or, you know, our clients and stuff, that I think mental illness has a profoundly metaphysical and super transcendent, I don't know, has a core to it that's very deeply personal, and it doesn't really mirror any other type of health condition. It seems to be more of an illness than a spiritual illness, a shamanic illness, rather than an actual illness that you get like a diabetic or any other kind of illness that you can mundanely get labeled as.
Yeah, and so I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 1994, just to give the audience some background. And I don't know how I feel about the term mental illness anymore, really. I like to say mental health challenges, because that's something you can overcome. Like an illness is also something you can overcome, but it just has this chronic kind of connotation to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if there's a better way to explain mental health issues, I would love to hear that from the audience going forward. Maybe if somebody can chime in and come up with a better term, maybe.
Yeah, I think once we have this up on YouTube, we should definitely, in the comments, please mention what you think would be a better name for a mental illness that's reflective of it being something that you can overcome and heal from, rather than just being perpetually medicated for.
Should we get into how we met?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, I'll start because I think the way that we met was kind of funny, because in 2009 I was actually freshly out of college, and I was a psych major at Cleveland State University, and I graduated in 2007, and my first case management job was at this agency in Cleveland where I was a behavioral health case manager, and I met Mark there. He was a peer supporter / secondary case manager at the time. It kind of did him dirty, but I was really struggling in this job, and Mark I think he really admired my work as a case manager, because I really cared about the people that I worked with, and it was really important to me that they got the help they needed, but also the way that we were treated was also awful, and I would say dehumanizing to a certain extent.
The way we were treated?
The way we were treated as staff, yeah.
Once you became a peer supporter? Eventually?
No, when I was a case manager, I was not feeling very happy about the way that we're treating us as like
Because you were a peer?
No, I was. The way we were treated was that we needed to bring in billable hours, and we were treated more like it's a billable hour farm than an actual like service where the person's well-being comes first rather than meeting your hourly expectation for the week.
Oh,
so
go ahead.
I just ended up burning out from it.
Okay. As a peer supporter, my job wasn't billable at the time, but now it is, I guess, right? Obviously.
Oh, at the time it wasn't.
Yeah, at the time it wasn't. It was a grant-funded position.
Mm-hmm.
And, you eventually became a peer supporter at the same place, like later on in your career, right?
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. Because we used to hang out on the clock and
The nice way of saying it is that we had to practice a lot of self-care. And that meant that we had a couple easy days a month or more. I thought it was definitely acceptable. And my supervisor was totally cool with it. You got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do first, right?
Yeah. I mean, I came into that agency 2 years later as a peer, and Mark, I was in contact with him, became friends over that time. He was like, hey man, you gotta get into peer support stuff. You gotta come in and apply for this job that opened up. I didn't know what peer support was, but I'm like, all right. Sounds kind of cool, I guess. And ended up working out really well for me. I thought it was, at the time, it was a very emerging field of mental health care. I thought it's still developing in Ohio, but generally I think it's splintering into more of a professional, like clinical role rather than like a very earthy like grounded and liquid type of, like, you're with the person in their own element and you're just two human beings hanging out talking about how to become better people and how to overcome your illnesses.
Yeah, peer support for me was it was easier at first, and then it became more challenging depending on who you're working with that day or whatever. And it ultimately can be detrimental to your own mental health, I think. Anyways, anybody that is in peer support probably resonates with the fact that you can go into a bad spell. Your own mental health can suffer to the point where you're hospitalized for psychiatric reasons, and things. You lose friends. You lose.
Yeah. Your family turns against you sometimes too. I think they don't understand. I don't see, the thing with mental health is, why is it treated differently than physical health? Like you were saying in the beginning. Yeah.
About having diabetes or something, and you're called a diabetic, and that's not your fault, whatever. And then mental health is something that people connotate with, it's your fault. You got yourself into this, you're going to get yourself out of it with help from medication and therapy and psychiatry and all that. But like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's.
I think the locus of responsibility falls on the person in mental health. Like, if you are not doing well, it's basically your responsibility for your own, to take care of yourself, kind of thing. Like, why aren't you seeking help? And I think a lot of that is really based on bias and stigma, because sometimes when you're not doing well, you can't really take care of yourself. But despite that, you're still responsible for getting the help you need. And many people don't understand that when you're in a state of unwellness, you're not really able to take care of yourself. And sometimes people turn against you, like family and friends kind of just, they wouldn't say it's a betrayal. Yeah, they ostracize you. Like, this guy doesn't have it together, or they're too much for me and they're a liability, or I understand people get burnt out by some people, but I don't think it's fair when it's a wellness thing when you're actually not doing well. Like, isn't that where a friend should come in and help out? And,
a peer.
Yeah.
A lot of people consider, like, this is what I consider my bipolar diagnosis. I think is more of a plus than a minus. I think it gives you a lot of gifts that like regular folks don't understand. Like you kind of have a sixth sense about things. You're an empath. You resonate with the spiritual realm a little more. Like the veil seems to be thinning between the spiritual realm and reality, which I think is virtual reality.
Yeah, like a VR world. Yeah,
I think we both agree on that we may be in a matrix of some sort.
A simulation of some kind.
Simulation theory. People look into that, but I definitely, because when I was actively seeing a demonic presence in 2015 for a month, I now see that same thing like in AI. Like when you look on Instagram or Facebook or something and they have this like AI generated music, like guys playing music, I see that a lot. Like a whole band will be playing music and their faces will change and faces will appear in their chests and stuff in different parts of their body. And that's what I experienced when I was actively seeing a demonic presence for a whole month in everything. Like I'd see it in someone's face. I saw it on my computer screen one day. It was just like everywhere. And the only thing that made it go away was going on Facebook and just telling everybody what was going on with me and asking for prayers and positive thoughts. And that's what made it go away, amazingly.
Didn't people like really give you a hard time for that online? They kind of.
Some people thought I was joking because I have stand-up comedian in my background since '99, but don't really do it anymore. But I mean, you definitely lose friends, and when stuff like that happens, you find out who your real friends are.
I would say that. So if you think about like mystical traditions around the world, that the idea of reality being illusory, kind of an illusion, isn't too far off from this whole simulation theory that's floating around nowadays, I think. I do agree that for me specifically, that my bipolar disorder has not always been a curse. It is kind of a mixture between a blessing and a curse. It does have positive effects on my life, and it's a very taboo thing to say. People do not like when you say that this illness that takes people's lives, which is tragic, does have another edge to it that's maybe more constructive in its way of appearing to the world. For me, it's been with my music. I think it gives me an edge over a lot of people, just because I feel like my veil, my connection with the big song, the music of the spheres, is much closer than any average person, any average musician. And I'm not saying I'm like the best musician in the world, but I do feel connected to a source of music that's much deeper than just what's currently happening in the world. And I think it's a blessing. I think it's really given me a boost. I think.
I was a DJ at Kent State when I was a student there in the 90s, and I was a DJ with two other guys, and one of the other guys became a Hollywood actor. I don't know if I ever told you this story.
I'm not sure. He
was like a good act. Like he was starting to really get some steam. He did a movie that I can't remember right now, and I think his first name might have been Jason, but I'm not sure. I can come up with that another time. But he eventually ended up getting diagnosed with bipolar. I don't know if it was 1 or 2, and he jumped off a tower in his town or whatever.
It's awful.
Ended his life. Yeah, it's awful, man. Because I mean, I wish I could have and also my roommate in college got diagnosed and ended his life too.
Yeah, it's
by his own hand. So suicide it's pretty rampant, and
absolutely.
I wish people would reach out and kind of throw in the towel.
I think a lot of guys have a hard time opening up because it's generally not seen as it's not taken seriously, or we're told to like man up or get your act together, or or just generally being looked down on. I think a lot of guys need that that group of guys that they rely on each other, kind of that wolf pack kind of thing. It seems like a lot of guys here in this country right now are very isolated and don't have really anybody to talk to. Even like a warm line would be better than having nobody to vent to and just not having any other options in your mind that you have nothing else to do to help you other than take your own life. I think it's a profound thing.
And there's men's groups out there now, like the Mankind Project, Man on Fire, I think is another one.
Yeah, I've seen those.
I actually tried to get into the Mankind Project, but I didn't have my vaccination, and that was the time when I wanted to get into it. I didn't have my COVID vaccination, so which is a HIPAA thing. Oh, whatever. So I didn't have that, so I couldn't get in. I couldn't even, like, it wasn't even
shysters.
Yeah, they were just like, no, we don't allow that.
My goodness.
So I don't know if that's still the case today, but I mean, that ship has sailed. I wouldn't want to be part of an organization that singles you out for that, you know?
It's weird too, because a lot of those organizations went virtual because of the pandemic. So it's not like you would ever actually talk to somebody in person at the time.
Yeah.
It's goofy.
We also had another corporate job together later on in our lives, which was like the last maybe 7 years or so, 10 years. And they actually let go of me because I didn't have the COVID shot. And we were virtual at the time, which made no sense because we were only making phone calls to our people. Yeah. We were doing peer support back then too. And they let me go for, one of the biggest managed care companies in the world,
Absolutely.
It was just like, sorry, man, you're not getting your COVID shot and you don't have a job.
I actually have a lot of disagreements with corporate peer support.
Let's talk about it, dude.
Yeah, so I personally think that corporate peer support is heading down an alley where the position itself is more...
you were saying medical.
Yeah, it's more like a case manager than a peer supporter, and I see it going into a more like, hey, you have to have X amount of hours a week, or if you work for a payer like we did.
The metrics, dude. The
metrics got you. Even if you don't have an hourly expectation, they're still tracking your outbound calls and inbound calls and face-to-face visits and stuff. And if you don't produce, they look at you like, they give you the whole quote we got all the time. We have to meet our, we have to meet our contractual obligations to our stakeholders, something like that. I hated hearing that.
I had a couple of clients that I had just talked to on my work cell. They wouldn't speak to me on the computer call because it was monitored by your bosses and higher ups.
Yeah.
So they didn't feel comfortable doing that. And they're like, I'm not going to talk to you if you're going to be talking on the computer. So I would talk to them, and I'd go outside during COVID, which was nice. Like during the summertime, I'd go outside and I'd be on my cell and I'd have my, my ear plugs in, whatever, earphones. And it was just nice to be outside, because when you're doing peer support and you're not leaving your house every day and you're just doing it over the phone, it's like, oh man, it's not good for your mental health. You need to get out every day. You need to see people. You need to interact. You need to have coffee with your friends or whatever.
Yeah, I think when it comes to work from home jobs in the corporate setting, doesn't seem to be a lot of emphasis on face-to-face meetings with their colleagues, or even like team building activities. It seems to kind of fall off the wayside, and you're just expected to like meet with clients and members and produce your contractual obligations, and it becomes less human. Which Mark and I, at the beginning of our peer support, like when we first met, our peer support journey, when it started as colleagues, we did whatever we wanted with our clients as long as it was ethical and helpful to them. We went to see movies with them. We hung out, and as an outsider, you might say like, "Oh man, a bunch of slackers," but they really opened up to us while we were with them in those settings, and we were with them in their everyday element rather than their I'm at a doctor's office element, if that makes sense. And those notes that we wrote were super helpful to everybody else that were on that case. And now it's more of a competition between us and the case managers, and it's not really where I like it to go. It's very far from where I've started for myself, and it's concerning. Future peer support in Ohio seems to be crystallizing into its own professional niche, and it's not really looking. It's so different that I think if you were to restart peer support in Ohio like it would be a different position altogether than it is now. It's that black and white and distant from each other, night and day. But it's something that we should touch on more as the podcast goes on, I think.
Yeah. I remember doing CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Team Training, which is when they take police officers and they do a whole week, 40-hour course on mental health, and how basically I think the goal of CIT is to take the person to the hospital versus jail. Right. Like, I see that as the goal. And how they get there is on them, as far as the police officers. Like, they do the best to get the training in. But one thing that I remember was I was introduced to the police officers when I gave my short story of my mental health story. I was introduced as here's Mark, he's a peer, which means that he has mental health issues, and this was unheard of 10 years ago. Like, we would never have peer support in the 90s or whatever. It started, I think, in the early 2000s, 2006 for me. But I kind of got that as a jab, not as a positive thing to say to somebody before they go up and give a little talk. We hire these guys and we pay them now, and before this would be unheard of. And what? It should have been in the 90s too, and before that,
That's pretty wild. I didn't know that's that part. I don't think when I did the CIT with you in 2013 and 14, it seemed to go way more smoothly than that. It seemed to be way more accepted mid 2010s than it was, I guess, in the 2000s. Which is a good thing in a way, but I guess kind of retrospect, it should have been that way the entire time.
Yeah, they should have had peer support. I don't know what year it should have started, but it should have started earlier than it did. Yeah. Because it's definitely proved to be positive for the... we used to find out things about our clients that nobody else... Or clients. There's another word.
Our peers.
Your peers, yeah.
I like to use the word peers.
Some people still prefer... I don't know. Anyways, I like peers too. But we used to find out things about them that their doctor wouldn't know, their counselor wouldn't know.
Nobody.
And we would get that information and put it in our notes, and then they'd share it with the rest of the folks. And they trusted us more than they trusted us as peers, and they trusted us with the information. And and we I don't know, I think we were able to connect with them better than the psychiatrist and the therapist and the case manager.
Yeah.
So
just because we actually spend time with them as another human being rather than this power struggle that they seem to have.
And then the friendship boundaries, that boundaries was so hard with peer support, because they're always pushing the boundaries, and you're always pushing back.
Yeah, so a lot of these folks are extraordinarily isolated. They just wanted a friend. We came in there and acted very friendly and human to human, and I think a lot of those folks kind of got the wrong idea. Even if we drew that boundary, they still kind of ached for human connection. And I don't blame them, Why wouldn't you want to connect with another human being when you have nobody? And these people had nobody.
Yeah, nobody for real. And then sometimes you would see them in a manic state, and you'd have to go up the chain of command to get them the help they need, and they would view that as you have crossed over into the mental health arena, and you're not my peer anymore, kind of thing. And then they would fire you basically after that. What do you think about that?
The peer?
Yeah, like having somebody get manic on you, and then you have to tell your boss about it, and then your boss is like, well, we need to get them help, and we need to get them in the hospital, and then they would talk to the psychiatrist, and there'd be a pink slip And then you're the guy that orchestrated all of that, and you're the big jerk, and they're not going to talk to you ever again. That's how it went down for me a couple times, at least. I didn't like being put in that position.
Yeah.
Of having to make that call to the
I don't
boss.
know. I wonder if that's something that... I know, like, mandated reporting is something that people try to say up front. I never liked saying that I was a mandated reporter at all because, like, that seems shicey to me because, like, if they needed to go to the hospital, they'd tell me because I have that kind of relationship with them. And for me to, like, go behind your back to report it to 911 or whoever needed to report it to seemed very kind of like I was double-crossing them in a way.
Yeah.
Especially if they didn't have the threshold where you knew they needed to go in immediately. You don't have the training for that. We didn't have the training for that.
No.
If they talk about self-harm, like, is that hospital worthy? I don't know. Like, all we can do is tell somebody with a license and let them deal with it. But it did put us in a relationship breaking scenario where we had to choose between the relationship we have with them and their safety, and it gets a little bit hairy, and it's not fair to us and it's not fair to them. Another thing that in this podcast I wanted to touch on too, as far as Mark and I, was speaking of potentially getting pink slips. It seems like to me that there needs to be another option rather than just be going right to the hospital. There's got to be other options available than immediate, involuntary inpatient type of thing. Like, why aren't there any more Hopewells in the area, or any other kind of like settings where you can do things other than sit in a
therapeutic farm community?
Right,
Yeah.
something like that. Even with your garden, like, why couldn't you have like a residential garden where you like stayed overnight somewhere and just work with your hands during the day or something like that? There's no other option other than inpatient or jail.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like a lot of folks don't really see too much of a difference between those two.
Yeah, because in 2012, that's when I think it was 2012 when I helped like spearhead the idea of having a therapeutic garden.
Yeah.
And it ended up being called Urban Goodness, and it was amazing. Like, people would lower their medications by coming to the garden every day. Like, I would pick everybody up. I had my little Scion, which I carried about.
Yeah, the car was sweet.
Yeah, 4 people total, and I decided to have 3 peers in there with me. And it was full every day. Like, my car was full every day. Like, I could have had a van or something and picked up more people, but the amount of like improvement that they made over the course of being involved with that garden was unparalleled, dude. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Going lower on the medications, going off some medications, like having that sense of community and collaboration and camaraderie.
I think you saved a few lives with that group.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, literally.
Yeah. Well, I think I did it for maybe 2 years total.
Yeah.
And we used to have a sale right there at the garden. I believe it was Tuesday afternoons. We would just sell to the folks in the neighborhood who ever drove by. It was like a little farm stand, and people appreciated that. And then we would do a farm. What's that called? Like when people go to
farmers market.
Farmers market. Yeah, we do farmers markets on Fridays.
Yeah, at the clinic.
Yeah. And that went really well too. Like, people really resonated with what we were doing, and some of the peers wanted to get paid out of the money that was generated. I think we made $1,300 the first year in profit.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't really profit. It was just kind of like that's what we made off all the vegetables and produce, and with a grant from the psychiatric overseers of the. I'm not going to say their name,
Mm-hmm.
the overseers of the Ohio or whatever. But we generated $1,300, and then the peers would be like, can't we get some of this money? And I would be like, well, we'll use it for like pizzas and going out. And we went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that was. I got us in for free for that, but like I wanted to use that money for like. Instead of just throwing it back into the mix, you like to have the peers kind of use that for like lunches and breakfasts and stuff and whatever else we could think of.
Yeah.
But that never worked out, really. It would just go back into the coffers.
Oh boy.
I used to use my own money to take people to breakfast and lunch sometimes because I just felt like, and I have to give back somehow. These people are they're basically working for free. They're volunteering, but it's helping them. But like they kind of want some cash out of it too.
They probably earned it.
Yeah. What'd you say?
They probably really earned it.
Yeah, they definitely earned it. And I would try to, be that person that kind of compensates them a little bit for it by having like meals and such. But yeah, looking back, it was it was in a urban part of Cleveland, and one day we came into the shed where we kept our tools, and there was a bullet hole that went through it went through one of the walls of the shed, and then it went into the table that we used for the farm stand, and then it went out the other side. So I don't know what gauge of caliber bullet it was, but I don't know if that was just like something somebody did for fun, or if it was like a legitimate, like, we don't want you here kind of thing.
Something more like a stray bullet than anything.
Yeah, I hope that was the case, because I think the community around where the garden was really enjoyed seeing us out there every day, tending to the soil. And I think we had 20 rows, and that each row was like, maybe 20 rows is a lot. Maybe it was 10 rows, and each row was 80 feet-ish. Yeah. And so we did mounds of... it was an amazing time. If I ever pass away, I want you to tell my wife that I want my ashes spread on the grounds of where that garden was.
I'll make sure to let her know, man.
Yeah, because that was like one of the happiest times of, like, I really felt like I was on point with what I was doing with my life and what I was doing with work. Like, those two things kind of combined at that point, and it was a great feeling for the couple of years that I did it.
Would you say that environment was more conducive to healing and feeling like you're getting out of your mental illness than sitting in an inpatient unit?
Yeah.
Getting seen by a doctor every day for 5 minutes?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of like what a soteria should be, right? Or
yeah, soteria. This should be one of our topics. We're going to enjoy reaching out to folks to talk about alternative mental health, mental wellness. We definitely want to have some guest speakers, and I think this community doesn't have enough voices in it, so hopefully we'll be one of those voices and kind of push forward the idea that people with mental illnesses, mental unwellness can be better and can receive better care.
Yeah, that's the goal, right?
Yeah, and I think talking a lot about like the spiritual aspects of mental illness, how it relates to like the shamanic or the spiritual components of historical mental unwellness. I think we're really good to be talking about stuff that's, more, it leans more on what's important about feeling better in mental health than a lot of this red tape, corporate, anyway, it's not good. I think people right now are being kind of used as money. That's probably a topic for another day, but people are being used more for their as a a source of profit rather than a source of like, hey, I need to help you because you're human and want to see you well so you can contribute to society kind of thing.
Yeah, like healing. It's real healing. Peer support is real healing, but it's got those, money kind of issues because you're getting paid for it, but I don't know, it's just it puts you in a weird spot sometimes, like we talked earlier about.
It didn't used to be that bad when it was block grants.
And you didn't have to actually generate billable hours. Now you have to generate billable hours, right? Now
that it is Medicaid reimbursable, a lot of agencies are making their peer supporters like fill in billable notes to Medicaid.
I think that tainted the waters of the career.
It started it for sure. I think it continues to proliferate and grow into distorting what peer support was and what it was meant to be.
when it was grant funded, like they used to talk about us going billable, and that was like the goal. Let's go billable. Let's find a way to generate income so you get better raises or better, And that job didn't pay a whole lot back in 2006 for me.
Didn't pay much.
It's just I was barely scraping by, and then when I started the garden, I had another job offer with the state psychiatric hospital. And they matched what I was going to get paid there. So was like my first bump up that really helped.
Yeah.
But I stayed with the job. I didn't go to the psychiatric hospital, which I probably made a good decision there, because that can be kind of a grim place, I've heard from people.
Have you ever been there as a visitor?
I was there for the interview, but I didn't get walked around the units or anything, so I don't know what those units are like. But
yeah,
from what I've heard, you can get assaulted, if you say people say the wrong thing sometimes, and
yeah,
you can get punched. It's just the way the job is, I guess, in that arena.
I've been there as a visitor with shadowing other care managers when I used to work at the corporate place.
What was it like?
It was very sad. Very dimly lit halls. They were like regular office walls. They weren't like like an asylum or anything like that. It wasn't super arcane. It was just more kind of, the energy was really very very low, very sad energy, I thought.
Yeah.
Very low vibrational kind of thing.
I feel like we get the energy to go up when we go places and do things. Like, I feel like, because about like the positive effects that you're like, we're all connected,
right?
And how one person is happy and then other people around them become happy just because they're around, and
yeah.
You might not even know that person on the other side of the wall in your apartment or your house or whatever, and you're probably making them feel happy just by being having a positive influence on others. I think we were good at that when we were doing peer support.
Yeah, I think we definitely paid it forward. The positive energy that folks got from us, pass it on to the next person.
Yeah, because nobody wants to be around like a negative dude,
negative Nancy.
Negative Nancy. And we sometimes our peers would just have a negative day, and then you'd kind of like meet them where they're at and try to bring them up, to where you felt you were at that day.
Yeah.
I think that was a good thing we used to do.
For sure.
I think our peers looked forward to those once a week or once every 2 week meetings in person where you would do something fun, go play chess, drink coffee, go see a movie, go to the park, have a cookout. Remember we used to have a cookout every summer? We would do that with them.
Yeah, for the men's group.
We'd have a cookout just for those guys, and that was great.
That group is great, though.
We'd play like frisbee and throw the football around. And
a lot of those guys in that group were really, 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 really struggling with some really severe illnesses. Like, they were not just like having a little bit of anxiety, they were having very, very hard times. And I think those times that we went out for a cookout, or even just men's group in general, they were there religiously. Like, they really benefited, and it may have been the only time they actually connected with people outside their family, if they had any. You know, it's like, it's powerful stuff.
Remember when I brought grapes to the group?
You ate all of them, bro.
They were so good.
Oh, man.
I didn't want to share them with anybody. I was like, I bought these grapes.
You hear about these cotton candy grapes I have on nowadays?
Yeah, the Concord candy grapes.
They're so good, dude.
Yeah. So, well, we're going to be hopefully having guests in the future. Today was just a day to kind of introduce ourselves and introduce the show and explain what the show is all about. And maybe we got off a little track, but I don't think it was a bad get off track kind of thing, because we just got to speak our truth, really, right? It's like your throat chakra's opening up.
We got off track, but we were still in the same direction where we're supposed to be going.
Yeah,
I think we did good.
We did good.
All right, take care, everybody. Good night.